Okay, so what I was saying when I realized, well, when you told me that the mic was off, I had a client this morning, and in my line of work, oftentimes spirit guides or ascended masters or messengers will come in to give some messages. So Jesus came through, and it was particularly for this client who is a practicing Christian. So I'm kind of going to give you a little bit of what he explained, and we're going to go through the chakra system. And I know that you came in at around the fourth chakra, so I'm going to give you the first three chakras. So yesterday I was involved in recording a podcast I was invited to be on, and the interviewer asked me about living a symbolic life, and that's a Jungian sort of term. And one of the things that I've been trying to teach you guys is to live a symbolic life in the sense that, you know, use symbol and image and story and myth in your practice to listen to what people are saying. So today, what I want to specifically teach you is to listen for words that relate to elements and what they link to. I'm going to give you some keywords as to what the elements refer to. And then I'm going to put it on the triangle, my model of 0 to 100, and then the midpoint, which is the 48 to 52, which is balance, to help clients achieve balance. So Jesus came through and he was talking about original sin. And like I said, my client is a Christian, so he was speaking her language. So this is not whether you're Christian or not Christian, it does not matter. And one of the things I was telling the students earlier is in my line of work, someone comes through to speak the language of the client. What you're going to do in your traditional therapy practice is if a person's a sports person, you're going to speak sport analogy. If somebody's into politics, you're going to use political language. I do the same thing. Okay, I just get the message in the language that the client is, and this person happened to be Christian. So it was through the lens of Jesus. And so I put the symbol here of the circle and the dot. The circle, I told you before, is a symbol of sacred geometry. Remember last month when I told you the two interlocking circles, the Hieros Gamos, which is the mystical marriage of self, makes the third circle, which is the relationship. But all sacred geometry, all geometry in the universe, so to speak, or in the world, starts with the circle. And the circle is considered sacred. It has no beginning, no end. It's why we wear it for a marriage, wedding ring. We're whole, we're equals. There's no hierarchy in a circle. And so we have the circle. And you heard already about the seventh chakra and the halo, but that's also symbolic of that. But there's a little dot in the middle. So let me just give you sort of a quick history lesson. Jesus was not a Capricorn. Jesus was not born on Christmas. What the Christians did when they took over, when Christianity sort of took over the pagan religions, the pagans were honoring the moon cycles, nature cycles, and they had winter solstice, summer solstice, Ostara, the Bacchanalia or the Saturnalia. These holidays, the Christians superimposed, and they made their holidays, Easter was Ostara, Christmas was the Bacchanalia, so that when people turned to Christianity, they didn't have to shift too much. Talk about a 48 to 52 in understanding the dates. They already had a calendar, and they were going to keep those pagan holidays, but they superimposed it with Christian symbolism and Christian meaning. Okay, so Jesus was not Saturn or Capricorn or born December 25th. But there is symbolism in that. There's a great book called The Labors of Hercules, and it's all about the mythologies, and I highly recommend it if you're into myth and symbol and astrology. And in the Capricorn myth, she speaks of the Christ consciousness or spiritual aspirants, people that are actually seeking a spiritual path that are Capricorn or born in Capricorn. This is a symbolic thing from the stars called the Tropic of Capricorn. This is not people that are Capricorn. Don't misinterpret. And so this idea of us birthing our spiritual life, our Christ consciousness or our Buddha consciousness during Capricorn has symbolism. It has symbolism about a loneliness and things like that. I'm teaching on Thursday, True Spirituality. If you're interested, shoot me a text and I'll sign you up and send you the link. It's at night at 7 o'clock. And I'm going to go into some of that. Okay. However, Jesus was a Leo. Okay. He was born in August. The sign of Leo, the sun is related to the sign Leo. The sun in our astrology chart, as in our heliocentric society, is the center of our solar system. Okay. So in our chart, in our life, the sun, the self, the fire element has to be the center of your life, which corresponds to the third chakra that I'll get to. Okay. So Jesus asked my client, or through me asked the client, what is your original sin? Original sin simply means we missed the mark. This idea of, being kicked out of heaven or Eden, those are the stories and the myths. In, my Greek mythology, I always talk about being castrated, Uranus being castrated by Saturn. It's the same thing. But what happened was we missed the mark. So as humans, of course we missed the mark because we're limited by a flesh. But the question is, where did we miss the mark? So you can ask your client, where did you miss the mark? What is your original sin? In many different ways you can ask this question. And what that's going to give you is the story. So my client gave me her story as a child. That's usually going to be related to the 0 to 7, so it gives you that. But I know that when you ask somebody their original sin or where they missed the mark, it's going to be related to the moment of conception, which is when they literally were sort of kicked out of wholeness, right? We've seen that before. The mother and the father, the egg and the sperm unite. They're given a body. The soul is now confined into the womb and a body starts to form. It's also going to be related to the pregnancy. It's also going to be related to the birth story, and it's going to correlate to the 0 to 7. Very rarely will a client not know the 0 to 7, but if they don't, it doesn't matter. What's your original sin, or why were you kicked out of the Olympus, like I talked about last class, or where do you fall short, or where did you miss the mark? All versions of the same question tells you the story where the person believes they're less than. Okay, and everybody believes they're less than. So this is super important. Less than relates to 0. More than, which is overcompensation, refers to 100. When someone shows up with a problem, they're going to either shrink or they're going to expand. They're going to live it very limited or very scarcely, or they're going to live it very loudly and very abundantly. I've been very clear about why I talk so loud, why I am so loud, because obviously I have a limitation from not being heard from childhood, and I'm overcompensating, okay? So whenever you see 0 to 100, or you will always see 0 to 100 in practice, it's because there's either a shrinking, I'm less than, I missed the mark, and I'm gonna live it out even more so, or I'm gonna totally overcompensate and live it larger than life. Today, I'm going to teach you how to listen with the elements so you know what words to put at the 0 to 100, so you then know what the issue is that the client comes with, and then you can help them achieve the balance with the 48 to 52. Okay, so I'm going to use the chakras and the symbols for that. So the chakra is just a Sanskrit word for wheel or circle, right? We've got 7 of them up and down and back of the body. Wheel is the wholeness. Wheel is the circle. However, every single chakra has a symbol inside of the chakra. I'm going to break it down, not except the 7th, and I'll explain. I think you guys saw that part of the lecture. So we're going to go through the first 6, but I'm going to focus on the first 4, which is what I think you missed, and the most important ones, because that's where the elements are, okay? So first I want you to hear what words. The first chakra has the element of earth. People that are lacking earth, or people that have earth issues or first chakra issues, are going to use real estate, practicality, adulting, money, anything to do with limitations. They're going to use words that are very earth, confined, scarce, things like that. That's going to be the language that you're going to listen for. When you hear those words, you're going to know that it's the first chakra and it's the earth element. Earth always has to do with resources. What we know about the earth is everything is finite. There's not that there's not excess, there's excess, but there's a finite limit of resources that the person feels they either got too much of and is rejecting, or they got too little and they want. So if you see people that are like attracting a very wealthy man or a very poor man, or if they make a lot of money, or they make too little money, or they're always in debt, they don't know how to balance their spreadsheet, things like that, those sort of themes, you're going to go and you're going to put it on your triangle that they're either in the 0 or 100. If the person has an excess of it, excess money, excess real estate, excess boundaries, excess responsibility, excess work, if they're a workaholic, you're going to put it on the 100. And if they have not enough, they're always in debt, they married a poor guy, they lost all their money, they're living a scarcity mindset. Mind you, this really has nothing to do with the actual money. It has to do with the mindset that they have. Their original sin or their wound or their conception story, their Hephaestus being kicked out of Olympus, has to do with adulting. Usually people with first chakra and earth issues were forced to adult very early. And the opposite of adult, so I put adult here, is they never grew up, or the child, or the innocent. So we're going to see this imbalance. So that person can show up to you sucking their thumb. I had a client once who sucked her thumb, and she was 20-something. That was obviously someone who had scarcity in resources or was forced to grow up, and she was sucking her thumb, try to retreat back to childhood, the innocence lost. Okay, so the issue that you're going to talk to about the person, or you're going to hear symbolically, is the earth element and adulting. In the chakra, besides the circle, there is a square. Okay, so you don't need to know this. I'm breaking it down for you, but if you want to bring up a chakra chart, you'll see. Where you see the symbol of the square always represents death, limitation, earth, the number 4 in numerology. In the Asian cultures, earth, or the number 4, represents death, limitation, because the body is limited. We're limited resources, the body dies. And so when you see number 4 in numerology, it's always linked to that. And in my model, I have a square in the 4 last steps referring to adult. Okay? So we have to teach this person to adult properly. So if they grew up too fast and they're continuing with that and they're working, and they're always adulting and they're doing everything perfect, we have to bring in the 48 to 52 and perhaps teach them how to play or be creative and be more childlike. If they're too childlike and they're sucking their thumb and they can't hold down a job and they still live at 50 with their parents, then we have to bring in the 48 to 52, which is more adult responsibilities, maybe teaching them to balance a checkbook, maybe to balance a budget, get a job, have some structure in their life, and that's how we balance the energies, and that's what our therapy focus will be, the 48 to 52. So I call this the Goldilocks conundrum. This is the solution. The Goldilocks is the solution. The client, and this is across the board, when the psyche has a wound, the psyche does not know how to heal the wound. So I have a Band-Aid approach in my model. And I told you this before, AID. This is awareness, this is integration, and this is do it differently. Hashtag. Awareness is simply aware that they have this issue. Your client may have gone to therapy, may have read a lot of self-help books, may have talked to you, and they're aware. They realize that there's an issue, but they have no clue how to fix it. The integration is what we talked about with the wrong alliance, with bringing in the mother or the father. I'm not going to repeat that. That's how we integrate. But this, the 48 to 52, this Goldilocks, is the do it different, the hashtag do it differently. We cannot do the same thing as our mother and our father and expect a different result. So one parent, overt power, one parent, covert power, 0 to 100. One parent, very loud, the other one shrinks, 0 to 100. One parent spends a lot of money while the other one is budgeting everything. You're going to hear these stories and see these things in practice, and your client, because the psyche does not know how else to solve the problem, tries to do it differently but does the opposite. So what did I do? I threw my mother out of I threw her buckets out. I wanted nothing to do with her. I did the feminine principle, said I'm not going to wear makeup, I'm going to be ugly, I'm not going to care about image. All of that feminine, I integrated that, healed myself of cancer, hashtag do it differently. I now have to find the balance. I cannot be my dad and I cannot be my mom, but rather find the 48 to 52, which is in my case a balance of masculine and feminine energies. So that's how we use the symbolic language, the element that they're speaking from and their story to take them to the hashtag do it differently so that they can indeed heal, or at least find some balance for a fleeting moment. So the first chakra people, like I said, are going to have this 0 to 100. The second chakra has a crescent moon. The crescent moon resembles, there's something called the triple goddess. The triple goddess is moon, full moon, waning moon. I know my pictures aren't that great. This is the waxing moon, that the moon is growing into itself. Then the full moon, which is full, and then the waning moon that is coming down. And that's the cycle of the moon. We say in goddess philosophy that the triple goddess expresses the 3 phases of the woman's life. You're a maiden, and then you get pregnant, you're a mother, and then after your children leave, and this is a rough estimate of it, when your children leave the home, then you go into crone, which is the waning moon. It's really related, like when you get menstruation, the years that you're fertile, and then menopause. That's another way to look at it. So if you've never become a mother physically, it doesn't matter. You still have menstruating years, so to speak. You still have mother years. You might mother a book or an artwork or a business. It doesn't mean that you have to mother a child. So this is the waxing moon, the crescent moon that's in the second chakra. The second chakra is the element water. People that talk from water are going to talk about neediness, are going to talk about their mother did too much, their mother did too little. They're going to talk about food and nutrition and a beautiful cup of tea and a little crumpet. They're going to paint you this beautiful picture of vases and decorative. They're going to speak from that element of water, like a nice cozy home or a very scarce uncozy home because the mother was cold or the mother was mean. And you're going to see that sort of feeling. You're going to get a feeling sense from this person because they're going to be speaking from that. Okay? What does that mean? The reason that the second chakra has a crescent moon relates to the waxing. This person's mother never grew up. Okay? Psychologically, this person might have been the mother to the mother. That was my case. Okay, these chakras work together. Nothing is just isolated. You're going to find people that speak from one language, but then you're going to see that it relates to several things. If I had a mother that never grew up, that means I had to grow up too much, meaning I balanced that by making a lot of money because I tend to lean to the abundant side and I never got my needs met. So these people need empathy, compassion, love, to feel vulnerable, and kind of have a safe space, because they need to kind of be a child. They need permission to be a child and sort of connect with their needs and ask for getting their needs met. So you're going to help them or teach them to ask for what they need. Okay, they're probably most of the time going to have issues with their mother, issue with babies, issues with nurturance. You might also see that they have like the umbilical cord around their neck at birth. You might have issues with a difficult pregnancy. These are just themes that might come up. These people will always come up with issues of sexuality. So what I did was unmet needs, romance, and sex is going to be there. Now, what's the 0 to 100? They're either going to give too much in romance, so maybe attract codependent people or addicts, or they give too little where they're considered cold and mean and limited, and they might create a person that has a long distance relationship. That's one way of sort of honoring that. Okay, but the root is usually a mother who like didn't grow up. So a few years ago, I was taking these biodecoding classes and we were talking about cheese, and cheese is symbolic of the mother because of dairy. And there was this kind of lady in the class, it was kind of annoying, and she's like, oh, my daughter doesn't like grated cheese. And she was very grating, like her personality would grate your nerves, and we thought that was funny. And I turned to my friend, I love aged cheese, like blue cheese, because I want my mother to grow up. So there's usually a maternal issue there. And the reason it's mostly linked to the waxing moon is because it's the maiden years. So that person maybe went to her heights in high school, let's say, the mother. Maybe the mother lived as the beauty pageant queen, you know, when she was 19. That mother's psyche was sort of limited to that time frame that she never grew up. And now this person, your client, speaks of unmet needs, which in my model, everyone has unmet needs. So most people, like I said earlier, everyone, in my opinion, has a second and third chakra issue. But they usually have a story around these things of mother not being an adult, or them having to parent the mother, or even mother absent. It could be mother committed suicide or mother died young. But there's like a young sort of energy there around the mother. Okay, so those are the words and the themes you're going to look for. Now, chakras 3 through 6, and you did come in for part of the other lecture, all have triangles. So this is my absolute favorite symbol. I think it's the only symbol that is necessary to explain everything. The outer circle is the wholeness, the 7th chakra, the integrated self, okay, or the universe. The triangle is symbolic of thought. The triangle is also symbolic in my model of the child, which is the beginning to start anything. The triangle means we have all 3 forces, positive, negative, neutral, that we need, the potential to move forward. Every single one of us in our 3rd, 5th, and 6th chakra has the potential to change. Okay? Now, some of the chakras have a triangle upright, some have a downward, and some have a Jewish star, which is both triangles together. We're not getting into that now. I'm just going to tell you in a nutshell, triangles facing up have to do with fire and air, so you might hear that language. Triangles pointing down have to do with earth and water. And the 2 triangles combined have to do with energy that's balanced. We're not getting into that, but so that you know a little bit about that. The 3rd chakra is the fire element. These people are going to be about passion and creativity and projects and energy and overdoing everything. Me, and power, 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 and energy and energy and energy. And then that's the 100. And the people that have the 0 3rd chakra, mind you, all of these are in balance, even the excess. We don't want things to be in excess. It has to be just right. It has to be the 48 to 52. The 0 version of the element, I can't get out of bed. I have no energy. I can't make a meal. They can't even turn on the stove. I mentioned last week, Andrew Solomon, who I absolutely love, wrote this book called Noonday Demon. And there was this really, really funny seen in his TED talk that was just screaming third chakra language. And he's like, oh, I have to cook, I'm hungry. Oh my God, I have to chew. The mechanism of chewing is a chemical breakdown and a mechanical breakdown in the body, which then is metabolized, food is metabolized, which is third chakra. And he had no energy. He was in the third chakra depleted. He was living out the zero, okay? People like me have all this energy, go, 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 and then I fizzle out. And neither one is good. This is an issue with their power, with their self-love, okay? I am a believer that every single person has a third chakra issue. And I take you back to the original sin. You missed the mark. You're not enough. Okay, the third chakra is the energy of the fire, which is the sun, and this is a symbol of the sun. So where did you fall short of God? Where did you fall short to being God, for honoring the gods, honoring your parents that you see as God? You fell short somewhere. So it's very popular and in now to say self-love, self-love. Everyone wants to achieve self-love. I think self-love is an inward activity, but it can relate to many things. In Ayurveda, the element of fire is called Agni. And we now know in functional nutrition, we now know in health that the gut health is primary. So people that have gut issues all have third chakra issues. People that have muffin tops have third chakra. They've created an excess outside of the third chakra because they don't know how to fill up the third chakra. So I have a theory called self versus selfish. I don't believe in selfless. People that have self or third chakra don't take from other, and they don't take from themselves. They give appropriately. They have a boundary. They know when to say no. They know when to honor their play. They know when to honor their work. They know when to honor their child. They know when to honor their adult. People that are selfless, and you will see 3 and 4 chakras together. I don't believe in selfless, but your client may use the word, I'm so selfless. My kids need me all the time. My parents need me all the time. This selfless BS is an imbalance of the third and the fourth. They want to pretend that they're giving unconditional love, which again, I don't believe in. And you can't give what you don't have. So they speak of selfless when really it's selfish. Selfish is when you take from the other or you take from yourself. And if you're giving resources you don't have, that isn't selfless. That's selfish to yourself. So you're going to see these sort of themes in practice. These people are going to have self-worth issues. What would be an overcompensation? People that live obsessed with self-love activities, self-love, self-love, self-love. Obviously, there's an imbalance of self-love, and people that are in the zero are perhaps not going to have any self-love, any self-worth. They're only going to work and live in function of the other. The other gives them validation and credibility. So you're going to hear these words. So even though self-love is the word of the day and sort of like the thing we're hearing and seeing in all magazines, excess, because anything in excess means that there's a scarcity, we've got to even balance that. So our 48 to 52 with that client is to teach them boundaries, to teach them self. So self-love is about saying no. That's how we're going to hear that. And then the fourth chakra, which I think is where you guys came in, so I'll just kind of review quickly, is the fourth chakra, again, has a triangle, has to do with the love of the other. Now, we cannot avoid pain, but we can avoid suffering. Next week or Thursday, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the victim, rescuer, perpetrator triangle, because one of the things that Jesus said to the client is, first of all, the time of Christianity, the era of Christianity, now we're in the age of Aquarius, but in the age of Christianity, it's the symbol of the 2 fish. The 2 fish is symbolic of the Pisces era. And it's all about savior, rescuer, victim, suffering, nailed to a cross, the scapegoat. I said earlier, I lived that. I loved that. If you want to know more about that, I have plain and pleasure lectures, and I've got suffering lectures. If you love suffering, and a lot of people do, they make love to their problems, they make love to their suffering, they're living this triangle. Part of the symbolism of the triangle is not only the ability to change the thoughts that I told you comes from here, you must shift your subconscious thought. You must. There's no option. So in the Bible, it says those that have will have more, and the have-nots will have less. And that seems a little unfair. The thing is, the have-nots are the people that are living in the zero of whatever their issue is, and they'll continue living in that scarcity. The ones that have a lot, we're not talking money, we're talking a lot of whatever, are going to continue to have a lot of that until they achieve balance. When we achieve balance and we help that client or the person helps themselves to reach that balance, then they've shifted the subconscious thought, they've left the child, and now they can go into the adult, okay? And that is based on a law of octaves, which if you're going to attend my lecture Thursday, I'll talk more about. So we must change our subconscious thought, okay, in order to achieve balance. The other thing is that all of us grew into this victim, rescuer, perpetrator cycle. We all come from a triangle, so you can call it, wrong alliance, you can call it mother, father, child, you can call it the mistress. I have a bunch of names for it. We come from this victim, archetype, and therefore there is a perpetrator. And one of the things that Jesus explained to my client today is that religion or dogma can be a perpetrator. And the sixth chakra, which I think you guys were there for, are the thoughts. What thoughts are perpetually perpetrating your peace and your balance and your silence and your state of mind? Just meditate for a few minutes, and whatever thoughts keep coming up is your God, is what needs to shift, is the power or the perpetrator that's penetrating you that you need to work on. And I spoke about that a little later. So this fourth chakra is the fourth chakra, the heart and the element of air. So air people tend to think very logical, rational, science, which is kind of ironic if you think that the fourth chakra is the heart. So the 100 is logical, rational, science, reason, everything has to be documented, APA, scientific reference, scientific method, or love and light and heart and divine. Both of those are hundreds. And then the opposite could be, and again, this isn't a knock to anyone's religious preferences, might be no reason, no science, no religion, no belief system, where there's no heart. They're cold, they're shut down, they're not vulnerable, they're not empathic, and you do have the Scrooge types that have shut down their heart, and that's going to be the zero. So even though it's the air element, it's funny because it's rational thinking, which is the counterpoint to the heart being open and just being vulnerable or surrendering to something that you shut down and you surrender to nothing. So that's the 0 to 100. And in my first book, I talk about the head to the heart, the link between the rational and the emotional. And we do need to live out our emotions in order to balance the fourth chakra. These people tend to really, really, really incarnate, those that love to suffer. They love to incarnate the victim, rescuer, suffering archetype. They love to be the scapegoat. I have no time, I have no money, my kids take everything from me, they never call me, and perpetuate this victim archetype. And then we're going to balance that with the perpetrator, which we'll talk about a little next week. Any questions about the symbols, the symbolic language, the meaning, how to listen? You came in for the second part, and if you didn't, I'll post the video for part 2 of this, but your homework would be, what is your original sin, or where do you fall short, and what language do you speak from? So I speak from fire, I'm always passionate, I'm always excited, and I speak from water, I'm always talking about the shadow and the subconscious and my mother issues, and in my chart, I have excess fire and water. And so in one of the classes, we're going to break down the elements in your chart so you can see on paper how much of the elements you have, but start listening to yourself and to other people speak and identifying what element they're speaking from, what unmet need they have, whether it's adulting, whether they're too childish, whether they're giving too much and not to themselves. Start paying attention to the symbolic language. Any questions about this? And again, you already, I think, came in right at this point. Okay, you have a lot of fire. Okay, so we can check on the chart. You can see all the elements. It's kind of one of the first lessons I teach students to study astrology with me. So we're going to be doing more astrology after class on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and that'll be one of the first things we do. That also gives you sort of the personality profile or the persona or the mask that someone in the world wears. So this really correlates in many, many, many ways. Does the element language make sense? Does the 0 to 100 make sense in that our job is to kind of help them unify and find sort of that perfect 48 to 52, that balanced state? And does the symbolism of the square, the moon, and the triangle make sense? Okay, of course. So I'm going to stop the recording. Both this part 1 and part 2 will be available. So I don't know exactly where you guys came in, but I think you both came in at that